with a telco company, namely Telecom, for 34 years. And before I left, I was the head of the information technology before I left. So having come out, I think just before, in the prior session, they were mentioning about, mentors and teachers. And so I saw that with my experience, many years of experience, having worked in a semi-private public sector and having exposure with other, in other international, influences in education. So I formed my own consulting firm, and by the way, we spoke about remote areas having no connectivity. That was the first thing I did. I brought internet back to the remote islands where there was no telecommunication there, and that was for the school and for my people. So that was something I did, and which is currently running, serving those communities. So coming out, I believe that having that experience, coming out, I would like to provide holistic services in terms of advocacy or consulting or advisory or mentorship or coaching to maybe SMEs or groups that don't have maybe very strong IT teams. And that's where I would want to help in that space. And I'm also a board member like Chris of ICT Cluster, because we believe in what it does. So ICT Cluster, both of us represent, ICT Cluster is a bridge between the business space, bringing technology and the business space together with the public and private and academia as well. So that's my role, and I guess that's the reason why I went into consulting, because I believe I can give back something. I can probably advocate. I can be a mentor in terms of development or technology in that space.
Bosa, a lot of innovation is about problem solving, isn't it? So do you have a methodology, a standard way of approaching a problem to try, before you even devise a solution, to try and get to a stage where you can start to actually devise a solution? I'd be interested in your approach, your methodology for doing that.
Yeah, for those of you who took up IT courses, you probably would have encountered different methodologies for software life cycle and all that. So basically, this is what it does. What I would do, and I have been doing that in my prior employment, is that first and foremost, the business or the environment, there probably would be an issue or challenge. So the best thing for me, for anyone to do is, before you can, many of us, because we know we've developed apps and all that, many of us would just say, okay, this is the right solution. That's not the case. So it will have to take time for me to sit down with the relevant stakeholders. And it would be the subject matter experts, the people who are actually running the process, or people who are actually providing that service, and to sit with them and have an iterative discussion with them. And one thing I found in my experience is having the right team and sitting with the right people is key. You have the right team from the beginning. Sit with them and understand what are the challenges they are going through. And it has to be an iterative process. And instead of just sitting with the bosses, I'd rather go down to the people who actually do the work and find out the challenges. Then from there, come up with the business requirement document. And again, that's a living document. Go through that process until you really firm down as to what is the requirement. What is it that they want to address? Then come back again. When we come back, I would sit and handpick key people, and I would pluck out. And these are some of the questions I would ask. If there is a problem, I would ask, who is the main stakeholder? Who is the person behind this process? Who owns this process? And that's where you select your team. And when we come back, before we go into design and to architect the solution, I would go out and then go to those business units or go to the customers, and I would ask, who is the person that, if I start this project, who would be the person that you probably would not want to be engaged because you need that person in your team? And the moment they said, I'm not going to release this person, then this is the person I will pick. So that's what I use. That's my technique. Because you know that the person is, that the reason why they won't release that person, because that person understands the ins and outs of the solution, issue and the challenge. Plus, they probably are the key player in this one. Because if we don't get it right, the design will cost you if you design a solution. So the next step would be to go back and design and architect. And then when you go back and design, before you come up with anything, you have to find out what do you already have. What can you probably just add on instead of buying a whole suite of solution? Sometimes there could already be something there. So utilize that. If not, then there's this option. Either you buy or you build. Again, there are options there, and it depends on the expertise that you have within. If you don't have the skills, and like what Chris has mentioned, then you might have to get something off the shelf, but then you customize it to suit the need. You have to customize to suit the environment. And I'm someone who believes in local talent. Before I left, it was challenging. And it's a male-dominated field. But before I left, my team had roughly about 70% were females. But that's not to say because females think brighter. No. It's just that in terms of, I guess, understand the sixth sense, we possess that kind of intuitiveness. And it helps when you bring that into play. That's not been biased to the men, sorry, my apologies. But that's what I found. We think differently. So after you come up with the architect, again, it has to be an iterative process. You have to go through it. You have to ask the right questions. What do you have? And what kind of vendors will you go through? Before you select a partner, before you select a solution, you have to be somebody who reads and understands the trends. Because one thing about it has to be holistic. It's not about just addressing this issue, but you have to talk about, consider security and scalability and other methodologies you have to bring in. You have to think about that in the long run. Things are changing in ICT space. So you don't want to build a solution like what Chris mentioned in his example. You don't build a solution where the next time, because it's not modular, you have to take it all out and rebuild again. No. That's why design is, to design an architect solution, it is key. Because otherwise you will be losing out on investment that you already have put in. And selecting the right team, the sustainability of that solution is selecting the right team to train them, bring them on board. Even if they're not technical, that's okay. You bring them on board from the beginning. They must understand what you're thinking, and you must also understand what do they want to envision. Because at the end of the day, it will be them. Your success will be the users, not the architect of the solution. It's the users. Because if they don't like it, that's it. It's a failed project. So that's how I approach it. So that's why, if you notice, I didn't mention any particular methodology. But I think sometimes, as Papua New Guineans, as local people, there are some indigenous cultures and practices that we also bring into the picture. And I think indigenous thinking and frameworks is something that is new, but I think it will increase in the next coming years. Sometimes the way we were brought up, the way we were innovative at home, comes and it helps us in today's ways of handling technology.
Thank you for that, Bosa. And that leads me on to my next question, which I'll ask to both of you. Maybe we'll start with you, Christopher, first. You've talked about a lot of innovations, and you've both had a long career in the sector. Can you name an innovation you've been particularly proud to be associated with, and tell me why?
To be honest with you, I'm proud with all my innovations because they all add value into the ecosystem that I built. My view is, if you're going to get into something, you don't go half-heartedly. You give it everything you've got. So to prioritize one over the other just goes against everything I stand for, I think.
Like children,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, there you go. You don't value one more than the other, right? I consider them my children. These are things that were created out of a challenge. So they run really deep. But just some of the things that we've done in recent times, I think one of the big ones would be the National Trade Portal. That was a big one for us. That was probably one of our biggest clients. That went on for over 3 months, doing a consultation with all the trade facilitation agencies. And that was just phase one of a larger project that's coming. That's run out by the National Trade Office. And just to give you a picture of what that will involve, it's a single view window for Papua New Guinea. So what that involves is creating an online platform that links IPA to the IRC, to NACIA, to customs. So you have an ecosystem there that's built. So when you create an account with IPA, then your credentials are automatically sent to IRC, and then you register your TIN certificate there. So we've mapped that whole process out now. That paper is currently being put forward to the government of the day, and hopefully, should they approve it and allocate funding to it, then the normal procurement process will apply, and we'll bring in the capabilities to develop that particular software. But the reason why I'm close to that project is because over the past 10 years, I've just been hitting a brick wall. If you operate in the agriculture space like me, you'll know it's a challenge. I've been to the bush and back. I've walked with our people. I've eaten with them in some of the most remote parts of Papua New Guinea. It's not easy for them. We sit here in the comfort of our own homes and in the big city lights, and we talk about solutions, and we overcomplicate things. But for them, it's very simple. I have the product, I need transport, and I need you to find me a market. That's all they want. So that's why that project, I think, means a lot to me, because in retrospect, that's what I should have done before coming into the place of technology, setting up the infrastructure and the ecosystem, even before reaching out to farmers and bringing them on board, onboarding them onto a platform that allows them to sell and trade their products online.
Thank you, Christopher. Your own project your innovation project, have you thought of one while Christopher's been talking, hopefully?
Yeah. Okay, so while I was with Telecom, we converge a lot of solutions. We have multiple billing solutions. We had like 4. So we had to converge into one. And then we also had our ERP solution. Then we also brought in the CRM solution. But then they were sort of standalone applications. But according to our process, there's a lot of paperwork that moves from section to section. So we came up with a project that we had to sit the vendors down. I won't tell you which vendors. We had to sit them down, and we told them that we need to bring in, we need to have these 3 solutions working together so that it is seamless to the customer. So that's what happened. So when we sat down, they said, no, we cannot do it. We've never done this before. And we said, no, we have to do it. So when we sat with them, we discussed with them our requirements and why we have to do it, because it takes a long process to either pay our creditors, and why we have to, our supply chain, and the customers take very long because the process takes that long because of the solution. So when we sat down, I was involved in the team in architecting the solution, and we sat down and they said they've never done that. So when we sat down, we were able to to agree on the interface, whether either we were interfacing or integrating. So we had to make those calls. There's a difference. So when we did that, a lot of new APIs had to be developed in order to allow that. So at the end of the day, because our customer is key, I mean, there is competition out there. We needed to be quick and agile in what we do. So that's what happened. When we sat down and drafted it, it took months. Again, when it comes to providing a solution, it's not a quick, it's not, see, there are different software solutions. There are apps or there are applications. So apps are, usually one particular set of function that it does, whereas applications, it's a bit more complex. There's multiple features. So when we sat down and we architected it, when we discussed and we said, no, we know it can do, because from this we can, because I had a background in database as well. So and I was strong in Oracle as well, so they had Oracle too. So when we sat down and when we architected, when we sat and discussed it, they said, okay, we can do it. So eventually we agreed, and we had to pay that extra money. So we did that, and the automation of the approval process happened. The passing, so when they go, the customer does not know, the person who is using the system does not even know whether it's going, all they know is the initial entry point, which is probably the customer, the CRM. But they don't know that through the process, it's hitting the ERP, which is the financials, the inventory, it's also hitting the billing engine as well. So again, I think that was one of those innovations that we did in country that I'm proud to be part of, because it was never done. The vendors have never done. They've done interfaces, they've done interactions with other similar solutions, but not the two vendors. But it was a win-win because they can now sell to other clients who are using the same environment as Telecom was. So I don't know about the IP ownership, but again, I guess, and I think in the other presentation, somebody mentioned, one of the presenters mentioned about a solution that they were using, and I smiled because that originated from one of the things I was involved in the architect.